Coming up on this episode of That Was a Show.
Hey, have you guys watched Muddling Through?
He definitely has that 90s, I don't know what you'd call him, hunky deadbeat.
I've always wanted to be a 90s hunky deadbeat.
Just the undershirt and the leather jacket, that hair.
Those pecs.
But first, a quick word from the hosts.
We recorded this episode in early May while social distancing, with the three of us connecting over Zoom.
And I upgraded my microphone. Now that we're finally releasing this episode, we want to encourage everyone to stay safe. These are challenging times, but we'll get through this. Be kind to yourself and everyone else. We're all in this together.
We also continue to stand in support of the ongoing protests for social justice for Black and Indigenous lives, and we hope that we can all work toward building a new normal, a better normal, from all of this.
Also, a quick reminder that our contest to win a That Was a Show t-shirt is running until July 31st, 2020. We'll tell you more about how to enter during the mid-show commercial break. Now let's share a few laughs about Muddling Through. Cold open. We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince. But those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Byrne,
Aaron Yeger,
and Andrew Helmer as Barry.
A Radio Gizmo production.
Hello and welcome to another responsible social distancing episode of That Was a Show. I'm Aaron Yeger and I'm here with my co-host, Brynn Byrne.
Hi. If you're new to the show, if this is your first episode with us, Aaron and I are a married couple, so that's why we're allowed to record together as co-hosts.
And we're joined by our friend and other co-host, Barry, over video chat, now with a new and improved upgraded microphone.
Hello, how's it going, guys?
Great, how are you?
Not too shabby at all.
So we're now a couple months into this period of pandemic.
Yeah, we sure are. It's certainly been an interesting time. I mean, I'm sure literally every other podcast, whoever's listening to this right now is also saying these things, but it just feels like almost every conversation you're having now, like you can't get around just being like, so how are you experiencing this global thing that's happening?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the one thing that we all have in common right now, so.
There are going to be stories to tell about this time period for so many years to come.
Where were you in April 2020? And everybody will just be like, home.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah.
Also home.
When I was your age, I had to wash my bananas before I ate them.
Why are you? You're not washing your bananas,
are you?
I'm
washing my bananas. I'm giving.
Why? They have wrappers.
They
have their own wrappers.
Yeah, but you're touching the banana, and then you might touch your face.
I'm giving all the fruit a bath.
Okay, enough with that. Okay, Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about Muddling Through?
Okay. So, Muddling Through aired on CBS from July 9th, 1994 to September 7th, 1994. It's best known as the show that had Jennifer Aniston in it, which aired just before the debut of Friends, and had Muddling Through been picked up for renewal, she would have been contractually obligated to leave Friends and commit to this show. More on that later. Muddling Through is the story of the Drago family, who own and operate some sort of diner/motel/gas station in rural Michigan. The series begins when the matriarch of the family, Connie Drago, returns home when she is let out of prison on parole after serving time for shooting her ex-husband in the ass because she caught him cheating. She has two daughters. The older daughter, Madeline, played by Jennifer Aniston, seems to have basically taken over the family business in the mother's absence. She also married the cop who arrested her mother and testified against her in court. The younger daughter, Carrie, seems to be in high school, but cuts class and hangs with bikers, and lives upstairs above the diner with her older sister and her husband, the cop. Connie Drago, the ex-husband, has moved into one of the little motel cabins on site with the blessing of his daughters. All of these details, the older daughter marrying the cop, the ex-husband living on site, the younger sister's neglect of school, these all come as a huge surprise to Mother Connie the moment she comes home from prison, as her daughters have kept these details a secret for 2.5 years. That overall setup for the series also basically explains what happens in the pilot.
Good.
So why exactly did you bring us this masterpiece?
Good question. So, our first 3 episodes coincidentally turned out to all be super high concept shows with some sort of fantasy or surreal element. And then when we did Townies in episode 4, that was a really nice contrast as a more like low concept hangout show. Also, Townies was sort of designed as a knockoff of Friends. So I went looking for another low concept show, and the fact that this one has Jennifer Aniston in it is just sort of a fun coincidence that makes it an even more interesting pairing. If 1,000 monkeys sat at 1,000 typewriters and attempted to write a sitcom, this is what they would come up with.
I'm gonna break character for myself here and say I actually really liked the pilot, and I thought it was I honestly, like, as far as sitcom goes, it pretty much fired on all cylinders. The characters worked, everybody was really good. The writing was pretty strong. It was I was not expecting to actually enjoy it, and I did. And I think that honestly, the show was like it was a victim of circumstances. Like, there are other shows like it on TV, but I think it was a better version of those shows. Like, this is like a Grace Under Fire type show, and this is much funnier than Grace Under Fire, and everybody in it is really good. Like, I actually really liked it.
Oh, wow.
I'm so neither of us really liked it, but I'm glad that you did, because that'll make this a much more interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I would say, though, that I will agree with you in principle that there are definitely other shows from the time that were vastly more successful that are not better. Like, I will agree that I think the reason this show went off the air is that it was a victim of its circumstances. Like, I will agree that that's...
We'll get into that.
We'll get into that.
Aaron's
and I think
got
that's
some real dirt on that.
Yeah. So I agree with you that the show didn't make it because it was a victim of its circumstances. And
well, also, I don't think anybody was watching it either. I mean,
No.
and nobody was watching it.
No.
So I don't think the reason that the show didn't make it was because of the things that I don't like about it. But there are some things that I find weird about it that I look forward to, like, pressing you on.
You know, like any pilot, there was some rough stuff, but maybe even to say that, like, no, I'll stand by my I liked it thing, but I mean, like, it's just more like we're 5 into these, and like, this is the best pilot of the whole bunch by a long shot.
I mean, I might grant you that. It's
like,
compared to the...
This is a show that kind of, it's fully formed. Like, you know, like, it's not coasting on fumes like Aliens in the Family is. Yeah, like, it's easily the strongest pilot.
I mean, I have a bit of a hot take. I feel like if Townies was meant to be a knockoff of Friends, Muddling Through was meant to be a knockoff of kind of a hybrid between Grace Under Fire and Roseanne.
See, I was thinking that too, and then I was just trying to figure out if it was just the theme music that just reminded me so much.
Yeah, I was literally
going
to say down to the theme music.
So I had to look it up and check.
Make sure it wasn't the same.
It was not the same person.
Okay. This will be a fun one to hash out.
Yeah, I'm glad that I've kind of come in. I'll be honest. I wasn't expecting to be alone on this. Like, I thought we all would have watched this and have been like, yeah, that was really well put together. Because, like, I thought it really worked.
I will say,
and I was 30 seconds in, like, you know, when we were going through the diner patrons thing, I was like, oh, this is going to be a rough go. But then from that point on, like as soon as Stephanie Hodge walks in and like the way she plays off Jennifer Aniston, I was pretty much like, okay, I'm on board.
Let me ask you this.
I watched the second episode just because I wanted to watch the second episode.
I was just gonna ask you if you watched the second one.
I started to watch the third episode and only stopped just because I was gonna eat lunch.
Well, this will make for a fun conversation.
Okay.
We can be sure of that. It's immediately clear just from the opening theme music and the whole aesthetic of the surroundings that this is another attempt at like a blue collar style sitcom to compete with shows like Roseanne, Grace Under Fire. Like that's so immediately obvious. And the blues music with the harmonica, which is like, side note, one of my favorite kinds of music, felt so forced in the way that they push it into this story world. That's just my 2 cents on the music.
I don't think harmonicas are very popular with the style of, or with the class of people that they're trying to portray.
Maybe
I
that's
think
what
it should
is.
be more of a like John Cougar Mellencamp vibe.
Yeah. I could see that.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's not country music because it's not the South, even though they're doing all kinds of weird accents.
But Aniston's character having an accent I enjoyed because I was just like, what?
Yeah, it's a little weird how some of them were being a little bit Southern, and it's
a little Southern, yeah.
And it takes place in Michigan, and like Barry, you and I grew up very close to Michigan.
Yeah.
And we know that accent. It's very much...
It's not this, yeah.
It's a, it's a Midwestern, they say a lot of back. And
yeah, in Wooder.
Yeah. It's like they could have leaned into that, if anything, and they still would have had that, like, vibe of small town.
think that it's also one of those things where this is a pilot that would have been made in a bit of a vacuum. I don't know if they knew it took place in Michigan in the pilot, or if that's a between episode 1 and 2 thing.
Like, well, they do. They mention Michigan
at the end of episode 2.
They mentioned in episode 2. They mentioned that they're in Michigan.
Now, do you think?
Well, they never say Michigan. They say that they're going into the city, and the city in question is Detroit, and then they accidentally cross the border into Ontario, which is when she violates her parole.
Yeah. Do you also think that, so they didn't want to establish that it was Michigan too hard in the pilot because they didn't want everyone to think that they were saying that Michigan was America's capital for statutory rape?
maybe. Yeah. I don't think any state would be necessarily thrilled to be portrayed this way.
Okay, so I wanted to save that till later, but let's talk about that. There was a point during the first episode where it's in that conversation where the mother, Connie, finds out that her older daughter is married. So, she's found out that her daughter is married to the cop, and there's some comment about, like, you got married 4 months ago, but you're only 18.
Yeah.
And then the dialogue continues and explains that they started dating during the sentencing period. And then I was like, okay, so wait a second. How old was she when this cop who arrested her mom started dating her? And then later in the episode, it comes out that she had been in prison for 2.5 years. So I'm like, okay, that's a problem.
I don't think any of these icky things are intentional. I think a lot of them came through tinkering.
Yeah,
I think
it's network notes.
Even just cutting, like, I think Aniston's character is supposed to be older than 18. I think she's supposed to be in her early 20s. And the other one is supposed to be 18, but I think they kind of fuck it up.
They chunked it.
Yeah.
Like, Aniston being 18 doesn't really make sense because obviously she would be, both girls would be
still in high school. Like, Aniston would have been finishing high school or whatever.
But, like, they both would have been in the custody of their father. So, like, there wouldn't be a surprise that he was there because, of course, he was there. So I think she is supposed to have been 18. She was supposed to have been 18 when the mom went away, and that's why she's left custody.
definitely they were trying to age down Stephanie Hodge's character.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a woman over 35 is not, you know, viable anymore, not a sexual, like, it's just such typical Hollywood
they didn't want the
sexism.
audience asking, why is this 38-year-old woman on television?
It's weird. It's because they're women.
The only thing that they needed to establish would be for a character thing is to have established that, yes, she had the child when she was in high school. You know, that's it. That's all
and that could
we
have come
need to
out
know.
organically, like later on, and that's like not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I just think it's some exec that was probably like, "Oh, we need to explain why they look so close in age," or
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think
it's
you're
some
exactly
dummy
right.
who was like, "Oh, their audience is going to be confused," and it's like, no, like Stephanie Hodge is a very attractive woman, and but she does look older than Jennifer Aniston. Like she does.
Yeah.
There are major logic problems and elements of that are problematic and offensive, and it could have just been alleviated by not specifying ages.
Just like
like I feel like you don't even have to specify how long the mom was away for.
they were all very hung up by the numbers.
Hung up on these numbers, and it's like, ironically, the pilot would have had more narrative clarity if they gave us less information.
Yes.
Yeah, you're answering a question that nobody's asking.
Yeah.
And then we're doing math that, you know.
Yeah.
We're
I did way too much math while I was watching the show.
Yes. We're supposed to be laughing at jokes, not doing math.
But then my instant question was, well, did Aniston finish high school? Like,
what's her deal?
Who's letting her run this business? This poor woman is just running this business somehow successfully, but like it's a diner, it's a gas station, it's a thing, and like this poor 18-year-old girl is running it somewhat successfully. Who's bankrolling this operation?
Yeah, this is something I'm dying to know. I want to understand the history of Drago's Oasis. It's called Drago's Oasis, right?
And Oasis it is not.
So somehow, it's
a dingy roadhouse.
Yeah, well, somehow Connie is a hospitality mogul and has this like empire of a diner, a motel, a gas station, cabins. I don't know. It's all very confusing.
It's a lot of.
I feel like it's a motor inn thing for bleary truck drivers.
Yeah,
it could be. They could very just easily be a truck stop, I guess.
But it's also unnecessarily complicated
with all the truckers that hang out there. Yeah, it is. It is unnecessarily complicated.
Are we just ignorant to Midwestern?
We might be
Midwestern truck stop culture, or
to be honest, it might be a common type of business there. We just don't know
I stand
about.
by it. I think you guys got lost in logic holes on this one. Where
many logic holes.
Big time.
I actually kind of specifically wrote notes for myself where I was just like, have to ignore, like I wrote like have to ignore premise, have to I did write who's bankrolling this operation at one point.
But where I was going on after this like long journey right now, what I wanted to know is, what is the history there? Like, was this a business passed down to her? Is this a long held family business? Is this like were her parents like, you know, or great grandparents, these like pioneers who like, what is
and also
I bet you
way more interesting than anything.
In a few episodes we would have gotten a parent character come back,
I guess.
But also, to be clear, Sonny Drago, the ex-husband who got shot in the ass.
Oh, he's the Drago.
He's the Drago.
He's Drago.
So it's his family.
Aaron, the show doesn't know that.
The show
has forgotten.
What
that
I was going to
completely.
Suggest is, I don't think they thought through any of those details.
They did not.
Yeah, they just were like, oh, we just want this colorful. And then again, probably the execs jumped in. We're like, well, let's add cabins into the mix.
Drago should have been her maiden. Drago should have been the maiden name.
Yeah. Exactly. It should have been her business, and it should have been her last name. They didn't think that far.
So they're the Dragos, right? Did somebody think one of their fathers kill Apollo Creed or what? Once they said Drago, I was like, what a weird name to choose.
The fact that Aniston's character is married to the cop
Yeah.
just doesn't work for me. Like, it's just too absurd of a scenario for me to buy that would have, like, even if they were appropriately of age, to buy that relationship would have happened under the circumstances is just, and putting aside the fact that he's dumb and there doesn't seem to be any like compelling reason why he's so attractive.
It's small town and she's not leaving and he's not leaving.
But it's just, it feels like such a stretch.
They're two of the only viable partners for each other.
Right.
You know?
Has anyone noticed in, that era of television, especially in the blue collar shows, there was a lot of young women getting married really, really young. Like, it's like Becky Connor
very common.
Runs
that's
away
yeah.
and gets married to the guy with the greasy hair, like really young. I think she's like 18, 19. And I feel like it happens a lot.
I'm sorry. Did you just refer to David Healy as some guy with greasy hair? I mean,
yeah.
Come on, man. Like, where's your Roseanne knowledge?
This show felt to me, I guess, the distinction between the shows that are set in this world that are successful, like a Roseanne, putting aside what we may think of
Roseanne
her
Barr.
recent legacy, but Roseanne, the TV show at the time, very successful show. I watched it back at the time. And I feel like that show was very much empathetic to and from the perspective of the people living in that world. Whereas to me, this show came across as a Manhattanite's view of someone in small town Michigan.
You know what? I think without knowing it, I felt the same way. You just verbalized, I guess, how I feel about this show. And that's maybe why I didn't like it the same way you did, Barry, is because I felt the same way. I felt like, there was something off. And it seemed like, oh, let's make fun of these folksy people.
In terms of tone, this show also does seem to be trying to thread a needle between, on the one hand, trying to have characters that are in some way realistic or grounded and in other ways absurdist, over the top and silly, and in a way that doesn't quite match up, because there are moments, there are lines of dialogue or elements that almost feel like something out of Family Guy. Yeah. And then there are other elements that feel like they're intended to be something out of Roseanne or Cheers. And it just doesn't quite add up. One example that I actually did like, in a way, I don't know, well, maybe like is too strong a word, but those two old truckers, the way that they talk in a way that is like purposefully, oh, look at the super, high-minded vocabulary that they use, as if, it's funny because we're flipping on its head what you're expecting in terms of how they speak.
They're in a David Mamet play.
Yeah, exactly.
That nobody else is in.
It's so weird. Yeah, like I guess it's like a bunch of different writers in the writer's room. Just like, oh, you write this character. No, you write this character. And then all the actors are playing that, like I read a review somewhere where they were talking about Stephanie Hodge versus Jennifer Aniston. And they praise both of them, but they're like, both like very different performances. Like Stephanie Hodge is like playing it out of 10, where she's like, she's just like this fast talking, like blue collar Mae West kind of character. And Aniston is like playing it kind of in her natural.
It's a little more lived in.
Yeah. So it's like a weird dynamic. So I don't know.
Hodge is very, very big in this.
Yeah.
And if episode 2 is anything to go on, it is in no rush to calm it down either.
Yeah.
For sure.
Contest.
We're announcing our first ever contest. Want to win a That Was a Show t-shirt? There are 2 different ways to win.
Subscribe to That Was a Show on Apple Podcasts. iTunes. Make sure to rate and review us. Whoever writes the best and funniest review by July 31st, 2020 will get their review read in a future episode and win the first t-shirt.
Follow us on Instagram and look for our post with the word contest across the top. Post a comment and tell us about your favorite failed or forgotten sitcom from the 80s or 90s, and tag at least one friend who you think will love the show. You can also look for our post with our Anchor web address across the bottom and follow the instructions below to share this on your own feed. Do one of these things by July 31st, 2020. We'll pick our favorite to win the second t-shirt, and if we really like your idea, maybe it'll be a future episode.
Contest.
Now, since I know that you watched the second episode,
Uh-huh.
one thing that I definitely think we need to add to our sitcom library of tropes is one character seeing another character accidentally in the shower. And where they are both equally embarrassed, where the person who sees the other person naked is just as embarrassed for some reason as the person who is seen naked. And that's a B story for the entire second episode.
It is.
There's like four scenes.
And how many other sitcoms have used that? You're not wrong. That's a trope.
That's
for
trope.
sure.
And I went in a bit of a research deep dive on that. Yeah. And this is not an exhaustive list, but here are some of the most famous incidents. So who's the boss? Who's the boss?
Who's the boss? Of course.
When Tony sees Angela naked in the shower, and of course, Family Guy did a sketch with a parade float commemorating that. In Family Matters, Urkel sees Laura naked in the shower.
Weird.
Seinfeld, of course, did this, and Kramer sees Jerry naked in the shower. And
I was thinking you were referencing the shrinkage.
Oh, of course, there's the shrinkage, and there's Elaine's nipple.
But that's
and
not a shower.
That's not a shower.
Just
it's
naked.
A pool. There is water.
Yeah.
There is water involved. But many gags like that. And then the all-time champion of this gag is, of course, Friends, which did an entire episode devoted to one character seeing another, and they all keep trying to take revenge on each other and then messing it up.
Yeah, and is that episode a comment on the trope? Maybe.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if it really was.
It's so much funnier.
Yeah.
Than anything we see here. The only thing I really like about the joke about her seeing him in the shower is I like the repeated references to apparently he has a very strange penis.
Yeah. So I feel like we went down this hole but didn't explain why it applies to that. But you've now just, why it applies to Muddling Through. So basically, Connie has the misfortune of seeing Dwayne in the shower, walking in on him as the trope, as the famous trope does. And they're both humiliated.
Yeah.
And apparently Dwayne has a strange... Is it strange or just very large?
I don't know.
I think it's strange.
It might be both.
She says that's not normal.
Yeah.
And then later brings it up with her parole officer who happens to go to the same gym as him. And he is like, oh, I understand.
Yeah.
Like they've both witnessed, it's like they both talk about it like it was Vietnam.
So it's...
he says it like I saw things I can't unsee.
Yeah.
So it's definitely funnier if it's just a weird penis. But I didn't think of it that way. I just thought,
yeah. I mean, I think this show is so 90s that had it been big, there would have been
she would have been like, honey, I understand why you're with him.
Yeah, there would have been a lot more winking to the audience instead of the abject horror they play it as.
Now, there, of course, was the big dick joke involving his nightstick, where they're making out, and then she makes this comment like she's, like a flirtatious, she's really into it comment, and then he sort of shrugs and then pulls out this giant nightstick and puts it down on the table, and she's like, oh, well, I'm still into you or something like that.
Yeah. I could go the rest of my life without ever hearing Jennifer Aniston talk like schmoopy baby talk to.
I hated it. It was very upsetting. Don't you want to smother him with kisses? I was like, I can't even. She's not convincing me that she's.
No, is she running a con on this guy?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah, because there were moments in this show for sure where I can see the massive amount of raw talent that she has and why someone who watches this would say, put her in a sitcom, but just not this one.
Yeah.
When we were talking about Aliens in the Family, we were discussing that whole idea of a country club membership or going to the golf course as like a signifier of you're part of the like upper class. Mm-hmm. And there's a thing in episode 2 of this where it comes out that Connie is part of this bowling team that she has now not been a part of because she's been in prison. And there's this whole subplot about how she's been replaced on the bowling team. And I feel like also in the 90s, every like working class family had a parent, usually the male character, but in this case, the female character who's on some like after work bowling team. Is that an equivalent?
It's absolutely a trope. It is a trope in more than just comedies, though.
Yeah.
Like, I still see this pop up all the time in TV shows. Like, just when you were describing it, I was like, yeah, like Dexter was on a bowling team. And like...
It kind of makes me want to start a bowling team. Do you guys want to start a bowling team?
Should we start a bowling league?
Well, obviously, who knows when we'll be able to enter such a facility again.
Yeah.
But
now, are we talking 5-pin Canadian bowling or 10-pin American bowling?
No, the 5-pin is such a waste of time.
Yeah. We could all like order a set of indoor like bowling pins and bowling ball and have like Zoom bowling matches.
Oh, yeah.
But do we get embroidered shirts with vertical stripes?
I think that's like the main reason why I wanted to be on a bowling team.
I think that's the main reason why. Yeah, that's the main reason why anybody wants to be on a bowling team.
You have to have your nickname emblazoned on the, you know, you know.
You get to feel like you're part of a team with your name on the jersey.
Yeah.
You get to drink beer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You get to just live out all your Uncle Buck fantasies.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, it's bowling night," and then she's like, "You're not on the bowling team." I'm like, of course she's not on the bowling team. She's been away for 2.5 years. These people are serious about this.
Yeah, they've moved on.
They had to slot somebody in. Of course they did.
Of course they did.
I love that the show like never seems to be able to get against her. Whereas, like, again, I feel like I blew the lead a little by saying, like, I liked the show. I appreciated the show more than I liked it because I don't like her character at all. She's, like, not fun to be around. She's well performed. She's all that. Like, her all her motivations sort of make sense. But I'm just like, oh, you're just a very grating character. and the show not knowing that, like, yeah, she deserved to go to jail. especially when we meet like her ex-husband and like he's a complete idiot, so it's like, okay, like divorce him, like, like he's stupid, he's an idiot,
but he's not like dangerous or abusive or anything. He's just a doofus.
The way they build him up before you meet the character, you're expecting him to be like scary. Yeah. Scary. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
You're expecting him to be a villain.
Yeah. It's
and then they bend over backwards to try to make him sympathetic.
Yeah. Instead, he's kind of like, he's just this like kind of hot guy in like a tank top and a leather jacket who's kind of a doofus, and
he's an oaf, and he clearly was in the wrong for cheating on her, but
he's very supportive of her in the second episode, and like I found that to be I found it to be very sweet, and like I was not on her side.
No, I wonder where things go. Was the implication from the first 2 episodes that there's going to be a love triangle with her and the parole officer?
I think that would have been
maybe. Oh, now that you're saying that,
because she's checking him out.
Yeah, maybe not a love triangle, but like I think a running theme would have been she would have gone out with the parole officer, the ex-husband would have been jealous. And I think in the show's method of continuing inappropriate relationships, I think the parole officer would have been a long-term love interest for her, for sure.
A will they or won't they?
Yeah,
that's the will they or won't
Probably.
they.
Probably. That's the Ross and Rachel.
One of the worst things about Muddling Through is the title Muddling Through. And if there was one reason that I had to pick, one reason why it was canceled, and not that there aren't, in my opinion, many deserving reasons to cancel it. But if there's one reason it was canceled, it's the title.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go for a terrible title like Muddling Through, you got to lose the G and put an apostrophe there.
It's not even muddling.
It's got to be muddling. It can't
muddling.
Be. Yeah.
I thought it was muddling with the N apostrophe, and I kept saying it like that, and then I watched it, I was like, wait, no, it's actually ING.
Because again, it's a folksy title written by someone who's not folksy.
But it's also 1994. It's not 1964.
Yeah.
It's no matter what kind of small podunk place you come from, nobody says muddling through by the 90s.
I would say
it's just weird. It's I had to look it up. I'm like, I kind of understand what this expression means.
Yeah,
but
it's not.
I had to look it up to, and I still don't even quite remember because it's really dumb.
I think a better title would have definitely been, I mean, hell, even Connie would have been better.
Or,
oh my God, she's a convict.
She's a con.
Yeah.
I just
Her
got
name
that
is
too.
Connie. I just got that. Oh
Yeah.
God. But that's sorry, it was a better name.
Or
but
like
still
Drago's
bad.
Oasis.
The more obvious one would have been to call it Drago's Oasis.
Yeah.
But really, you'd have to come up with a better name for the restaurant than that.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
it's like a weird, it's a weird name.
In the second episode, there's a scene where the cop husband is waiting tables in the diner.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, you can't just drop that without explanation. He's supposed to be a full-time police officer. He's not just waiting tables because he lives upstairs. I don't buy that for a second.
Actually, it was something that I kind of liked because of the plot. I intrinsically understood what was going on because the ex-husband doesn't work there either, but they're both working there because the three girls have decided to actually go out on the town. So clearly they've decided to help.
Is that it?
They've decided to help them out because it's the three of them that work there.
Right.
And so when all of them are gone, you obviously have to explain who the fuck is running the diner. So the ex-husband and I was kind of okay with that in a way that I feel like in a small town in this weird family setting they have. Yeah, I kind of feel like that.
You know
probably
what? You're
would
so
happen.
much more intuitive than me, and I almost
Yeah,
there was
I was trying to figure out what the dumb joke
there was another point.
I enjoy little things like that where I have a logic problem that gets answered to me in the script where like my thing where they're like, they're all going on the town. And I'm like, who's running it? And then they show him waiting tables. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, you picked up on that, but you didn't pick up on the whole like age things that we were hung up on. So
I know, right?
There's obviously problems if you're getting one half and we're getting one half, and
Yeah.
like as viewers we can't
I
put it
feel
all
like-
together.
I feel like that's a perfect review of this show is there's obviously problems.
and I think a lot of these problems could have been solved by having certain things expository through dialogue and
Mhm.
certain things omitted and flipping those choices. So
Yeah.
we don't need to know all their ages,
No.
but I would have loved a line of dialogue of like, hey, can you look after the place while we go out? You owe
Or-
me that favor or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
I need that.
Sure.
You're very intuitive and that's amazing. I need that to be set up for me.
Or like that beat where they're failing at it, where they're like, oh, like we can't like run this place like the girls can or whatever.
Oh shit. You know what? That scene was cut. That scene was definitely cut. Because
Yes.
I remember
probably.
very distinctively thinking, it's weird that we got the information that they went to Detroit as exposition and not as a scene. I feel like there was a scene
Yeah.
where they went.
That
Yeah.
could be
they,
it too.
They actually seem to explain a scene that happened. Like they explain that she came home and the daughter talked her into it. Like that's a scene that happened, and it didn't work for whatever reason, so they cut it.
Yeah. And that actually tees up my last plot point that I noted, which was that episode 2 ends with a nice shout out to Ontario
Woo,
because
woo.
they accidentally crossed
Namely,
the border.
Our hometown, Barry.
Yeah, Windsor.
Windsor.
Except for because, and this is very common on TV,
Yeah.
nobody ever knows what's across from Detroit. They
Yeah.
always just say
They
Ontario.
just say Ontario. They just say Canada.
Yeah. Just generic Canada.
Yeah.
Usually, yeah. Ontario gets dropped a lot, except for the Simpsons this year, who went to Windsor.
Oh,
They
yeah.
did? Really?
Oh yeah. Oh,
How have
wow.
I missed that?
Yeah, they went to Lisa lives in Windsor for a little while.
I was like, for the whole first 2 episodes of this, trying to
Yeah.
figure out where in America this is supposed to take place.
Yeah,
And it's
so were they.
And it's finally answered right near the end where they went into the city. What city? Detroit. So then I can glean, okay, so they're in Michigan, I guess, and then they accidentally
Yeah.
cross the border,
Oh.
go into
So-
Ontario, and that is where the episode ends on the idea that Connie
Right.
violated her parole.
So honestly, Aaron, they didn't know where it took place until the plot point about her breaking her parole needed to come up.
And maybe that's why Aniston's
That's why they chose the
accents
city.
were weird, like
Yep.
in the pilot, because they didn't know where it was.
So maybe
Yep.
until they wrote that
I
scene,
don't
they
know.
thought that it would be in the South or something.
That's exactly what I
Oh,
was
boy.
thinking. Is Roseanne set in Michigan too?
No,
it is, right?
I think
Isn't
it's no.
Lansing, Michigan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it Lansing, Illinois?
I think it's Illinois.
Oh, maybe it is Illinois.
Oh, right. There's a whole lot of Illinois stuff
Yeah.
in that. Please cut
Similar
this
type
from-
of Midwestern
Please cut this
small
from the
town.
Midwest.
episode. I don't want people out there knowing that I forgot things about Roseanne. So I wanted to ask you something that was bugging me this entire pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Where was Conchetta Farrell?
I know.
Of all settings that call for Conchetta Farrell.
I know. I even briefly pictured a version of this show where like Conchetta Farrell was the lead, and I was like, yeah, I like it.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Last time you suggested a segment where what's the version of this show that works?
Yeah.
So throw it out there. What's the version of this show that works, Barry?
The version of a show that works always is one that gives Conchetta Farrell more lines.
So, Brynn, I would love to hear a version of 6 Degrees of Friends for this show that does not involve Jennifer Aniston.
Okay. So, if again, this is your first time listening to us, I do a little thing where I connect this short lived or forgotten sitcom to one of the most iconic sitcoms of the time, Friends, in 6 degrees or less.
So how far are we from Friends?
Ignoring the Jennifer Aniston of it all, Muddling Through is still only 1 degree from Friends.
Okay, and who do we have?
Okay, so it's actually not a cast member. It's our girl Pamela Fryman,
Woo!
the very prolific television director. She directed several episodes of Friends, as well as a few episodes of Muddling Through.
Right
And,
on.
Yeah, and cast-wise, we're still only 2 degrees away because D. David Morin, who plays Sonny Drago, was in a few episodes of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, alongside Matthew Perry, who was, of course, Chandler Bing on Friends.
Oh. You know, I don't remember him actually, but that's okay. It's been a while since I've seen that.
Okay, so now we'll address the elephant in the room. Obviously, Rachel Green herself, Jennifer Aniston, was in Muddling Through. And her presence in Muddling Through is probably, in addition to what Aaron said earlier, is the actual reason that this show got canceled. It wasn't just, weak writing. It was actually a network conspiracy. So I'll let Aaron take us down that road.
So this is actually something that may have been suspected for years, but this came out in a more definitive form fairly recently. So apparently this cultural historian Saul Austerlitz wrote a book called Generation Friends that was released on the 25th anniversary of the beginning of Friends. And so I believe this was reported last year in 2019. I read about this in IndieWire, but it seems to be all over the entertainment press from about that time.
Mm-hmm.
So as it happened, Jennifer Aniston shot the first run of episodes of Muddling Through. She then shot the first half season of Friends before either of those shows hit the airwaves. So she, I guess, had committed to Muddling Through first, but then also worked on the first run of episodes of Friends. And had Muddling Through been picked up for renewal, she would have had to leave Friends and commit to Muddling Through, and she would have had to have been replaced on Friends.
Interesting.
So before either of these shows debuted, the team at NBC behind Friends knew that she was a big deal and that this was going to be a big show. They just knew, like, we can't lose her. So apparently this is how it went down. Once they found out that Muddling Through was going to debut in that summer, there's a quote here. There's a direct quote. So I'll say, Muddling Through had already shot a half dozen episodes, none of which had aired, and CBS, after some dithering, ultimately chose to put the show on its summer schedule in the relative dead zone of Saturday nights. So when the executives at NBC found out about this, they decided they wanted to find a way to kill the show. So what they did was, it turns out they were sitting on a pile of unreleased original TV films adapted from Danielle Steele novels, which were bound to do very well with the primarily female and specifically the type of audience that would have tuned in for Muddling Through.
And for those of you out there who aren't familiar, Danielle Steele was the hot shit romance and drama novelist.
She still is, isn't she?
Of the 90s. I don't know if she's still hot now, but she was like the tits back then. Like, she was like the most popular mainstream novelist of that genre.
She was an empire. She was an empire unto herself.
So basically what they did was, rather than play those made-for-TV movies in whatever time slot would have yielded the most success for those movies, they instead played them precisely opposite every episode of the first run of Muddling Through to make sure that they would steal as much of the right demographic as possible to keep the ratings for Muddling Through low enough that it wouldn't get picked up for renewal.
That's some really interesting tactics there. It's kind of funny though, because like I feel like they they clearly hadn't seen the show. Like the show would have taken care of itself. Like, and also like CBS clearly knew too, because nobody spends a lot of money on a sitcom that they think is going to be a success and then burns it off in the summer. Yeah, like CBS was already like holding it, like knowing it wasn't going to work. But I find it funny that NBC was like, we need to do this one last thing. Just to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, they just had to clinch it. They couldn't take the risk. And it's kind of funny
because like you want to blame both of them, but it's like, why the fuck didn't she have a non-compete clause? Like, why was she even allowed to do two shows at once? Like,
weird.
This is both of their faults.
I smell like 1990s shenanigans on all sides. Like
you almost wonder if there was like, if this is like something where it's like, and that's why you have to sign exclusivity deals when you do a pilot. Because
the
like
Jennifer Aniston clause.
because so it's very, very common now, and probably not then. It's very common now for a network to make an investment in you as a leading man or lady,
like a 3-show deal or whatever. Yeah.
So the fact that this is, and it's also very common for writers as well to get like, you know, a first look deal for 3 things. That stops you from going over to another network to do this.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked about what they did before, let's do the spin-off where you talk about where some of these people went on after.
I mean, again, let's leave Jennifer Aniston out of the whole thing because, you know, everybody knows where she went after
of course. That. If you're listening to this and you don't know who Jennifer Aniston, just how did you get this far?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that nice girl from the water ads.
Oh, my God.
What happened to Stephanie Hodge? I'd be curious about that.
Stephanie Hodge was the mom on Unhappily Ever After.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah, and that totally, like, her style, her delivery style makes so much more sense.
On an exaggerated show, yeah.
But yeah, so she was on Unhappily Ever After. She wasn't on for its full run of 5 seasons. She was only 3 or 4 seasons.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Another fun little tidbit, you know, it's not really a success story, but Scott Wara, who plays Dwayne, the cop, did an episode of Townies.
Oh, yeah.
So it's connecting these, these little working class, short-lived sitcoms.
Okay, Barry. So I'm a network executive in the early to mid 1990s, and you are a producer. Pitch me Muddling Through.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
Have you seen this girl? She's going to all the auditions. She's walking around the set. She's apparently this huge thing. We gotta get her. Have you seen her?
Who?
Her name is Jenny Aniston. Jenny Aniston's her name. She's gonna be great. So have I got a show for her?
Okay, what's the show?
It's called Untitled Jenny Aniston Vehicle. In it, she will be a character who interacts with other characters in a comedic fashion. That's it. I haven't really worked it out beyond that, but I say we do it.
All right, I think we can be in business.
Johnny, get my business cocaine. This was fun. We've had a lot of laughs, but some things are no laughing matter. What a we learn from muddling through?
We learned that a Danielle Steele miniseries can be a powerful disruptor in the television landscape.
Well, I guess that was muddling through.
Yeah.
Once again, it was fun sitting with both of you guys, even if it's just through Zoom. And
I guess we answered the question that it was, in fact, a show.
Technically, yes, it was a TV show.
It was a show.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And if you're still living under social distancing, be safe, be healthy, have some laughs, and we look forward to next time.
See ya. That was perfect.
Yeah.
That was good.
And cut to credits. That Was a Show is a production of Radio Gizmo. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Instagram for info about upcoming episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends about it.
Next time on That Was a Show.
Here's the notes that I have on the credits. These credits are amazing.
Yeah.
A complete masterpiece.
They are the most 90s of all 90s.
Legendary artist and title designer Saul Bass wishes he could design a sequence so masterful. Deborah Jo Rupp.
Yeah.
How great is she in everything?
She's the savior of every scene of every show that she's in.
Radio Gizmo.